Welcome everyone to the CK12 Certified Educator Program. We're excited to have you all here for today's session called CK12 Simulations and PLIX Interactives. We're coming to you live from the CK12 offices in Palo Alto, California in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm Lindsay, a member of the CK12 team, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before I introduce you to my coworkers, Katie and Sonia, who will be demonstrating our PLIX and simulations today, I'd like to say a few things about our Certified Educator program and make sure everyone is comfortable with the two Zoom windows. So let's talk about Zoom first. Right now, you guys should be seeing two different options on your Zoom screen, one that's for Q&A and one that's for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK12 or want to see one of our instructors demonstrate something, please put it in the Q&A window. We will pause for the Q&A after each major topic is addressed. The chat window, which I think is already quite active with a lot of you, is a place for community conversation. We'd love for you all to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, tell us where you live, subject you teach, what grade you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you're sending any general posts to all panelists and attendees. Unfortunately, by default, Zoom has it set up where it usually just goes to all panelists, so please make that change and send it to all panelists and attendees if you want everybody to see what you've posted. Also, while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you are having any trouble with your video or audio, please let us know in either of these windows. So as most of you know, this webinar is part of our summer CK12 Certified Educator program. And the basic requirements of our program is to attend 7 live sessions. You're going to complete some accompanying assignments that should take 20 or so minutes. And then at the end, after you've attended the Maximizing Learning with CK12, you're going to fill out a final form where you're going to request your certification. And at that point, you're going to be CK12 certified, and that's going to be really exciting. So if you have questions about our program, again, go ahead and type them in the Q&A window. We do have a full team of people here. You'll see Katie, you'll see Star answering some questions that you have by text. So ask away if you have anything you want to know. But right now, let me introduce you to my colleague. We have Katie H and Katie S. So this is Katie S, who's going to be talking to you about our PLIX Interactives.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thank you to everyone who joined us today for today's session on CK12 Simulations and PLIX Interactives. Today, we are going to highlight our Science and Math PLIX, which stands for Play, Learn, Interact, Explore. This tool allows users to animate ideas through simple interactions. Also, we will be discussing our science simulations, which enable learners to discover the scientific principles that govern a real-world setting in a fun and interactive way. Before we get into the core content of the webinar, we would like to find out a little bit more about familiarity with these interactives. You'll see a poll here in a few seconds that will prompt you to respond to a question. So here's the question. How familiar are you with CK12 simulations and PLIX interactions? You could select all answer choices that apply. I am new to them. I use PLIX occasionally. I use simulations occasionally. I use PLIX frequently, or I use simulations frequently. I'll pause for a few seconds to let you finish answering this poll. Remember, please select all that apply to you. All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you are new to our interactives, so this is a great time for us to tell you all about them. All right, now let's move and discuss PLIX. In this first section of the webinar, I'll help you to get to know PLIX. We'll go over what a PLIX is, the structure of a PLIX, and how to find a PLIX. First, we'll talk about the ways to use PLIX in and outside class, to differentiate instruction, and to start a conversation. Our goal is to get you ready to try a PLIX in your class, and even in the first week of the school year. So PLIX stands for Play, Learn, Interact, Explore. It is a visual learning modality that allows users to animate ideas in a concept through simple interactions. We have over 1,130 interactives that span both math and science concepts and can be filtered by subject, keyword, concept, or standards. Also, Plix, like everything else offered by CK12, is free to all users. All you have to do is sign into CK12 to access them. All right, so after you've opened up a Plix, the first thing you do is read the description on the left. The description explains what the interactive is about and provides directions on how to interact with it. Next, use the interactive by following the prompt in the instructions. In the interactive, you can explore the concept. If you need to start over, there's a refresh button at the bottom that you can use. After you've used the interactive, click the challenge button below the description. This opens up the challenge questions. The questions often build upon one another to help students reach a deeper understanding of a concept. The final question is a discussion question that you can use for a class conversation. This is a great place to think about differentiating learning by having students try the first few questions or work their way through to the higher level thinking and discussion questions. As a side note, anytime that we bring up a teaching strategy, we'll post a brief description in the chat window so you can see it there. We'll also send you a full list as a follow-up to this webinar. Along the toolbar at the top of the Plix, you'll see that there are even more features. We will discuss more of these features as we go. And now let's dive into a Plix. All right, this one's one of my favorite. This Plix is about lunar phases. The description of this Plix includes a prompt on how to interact with it. Notice that it says drag the red point. Moving the red point changes the phases of the moon in accordance with the labels on the slider. At the top right of this Plix is an orange button to assign to class. You can assign Plix to students in the CK12 class group by clicking on that button. If you want to learn more about assignments, feel free to ask us in the Q&A window or check out our webinar groups and practice 101. You can see the recording of a recent session on our program page or join us Wednesday morning when we host it again. Okay, so let's look at another Plix for a second. Before we explore the Plix itself, you can see in the top right the options to give feedback and adjust the size of the text by clicking the icons in the upper right corner of the screen. You'll notice that this Plix about rules for dilation has the same description and prompt area, the simple interaction, and the challenge questions. This Plix uses two of the most frequently seen question types, multiple choice and select all that apply. So let's try some. Right, there's our select all that apply. If a student is struggling with a question, they can often find hints to help answer the questions. So yeah, there's our hints. Got a couple here. Note that if you get an answer wrong, let's see, you can see the option to show the correct answer. So let's do a few correct options here, but not all of them. And there you go, show correct answer. You can see what you missed. Once again, this is a learning, not an assessment tool. So students will be able to get immediate feedback and guidance when they attempt a question. Students can also use this Learn More pop-up option to read about the matching concept and gain a better understanding of it. Encouraging students who are struggling to access these resources is another great way to personalize and support student learning. So now that you've seen two Plix, you may be wondering where you can get your hands on them. You can access our Plix through the website on any computer or tablet with a screen size of 7 inches or larger for Mac products and 9 inches or larger on other devices. It really has to do with the screen resolution. You can also use the search bar to find content and modalities, including Plix, or you could open Plix from within any concept. You can access Plix through the circular Plix icon on the home page. Alternatively, you can jump directly to the Plix browse page using www.ck12.org/Plix. Let's see what that looks like. All right, once you're on the home page, or excuse me, the browse page, you have a few options. Remember to sign in if you haven't, and then you can choose your branches. This will help filter your Plix according to areas you're teaching. If you've done this and you want to update those branches, you can click on Change Branches. In addition to searching on the main site, you can search within the Plix browse page. Here you can search for a title, concept, or even CCSS or NGSS standards. You can find PLIX in all branches of math and science. To achieve this depth of coverage, we've developed some really diverse PLIX. Some PLIX are exploratory based, while others check for student understanding. Some PLIX are abstract and others are based in the real world. So let's dive into a few examples. These exploration-based PLIX are sandboxes in which a student can play around and experiment with an idea. In the distance between 2 points taxicab distance PLIX, students explore 2 different ways to find distance between 2 locations. In the Ohm's Law PLIX, students explore how Ohm's Law affects the current in a circuit. A great teaching strategy would be to have students explore a PLIX and then share their different experiences and what they learned with each other. In some PLIX, like these, students can get feedback to check their understanding of a concept. The structure of water PLIX allows students to rotate water molecules to form hydrogen bonds. In the law of cosines PLIX, students find the missing side lengths of triangles using law of cosines. These PLIX could be used as a review of a concept, so students could see how well they understand a concept before an assessment. In many PLIX, students can manipulate graphs, diagrams, or variables. In this sine and cosine PLIX, students can explore how the values of trig functions relate to a given angle. In the refraction bandgap PLIX, users change the bandgap of a substance to see if a photon can fit through. As a lesson, you could have students screenshot a few different states for a graph or set of variables and explain what changed and how the change affected the graph or situation. Some PLIX use real-world contexts to teach math and science concepts. In the Rainforest Math Quest PLIX, students can locate villages on a map using a scale. In the rate of dissolving sugar PLIX, students observe what happens to a sugar cube in tea as the temperature changes. For these real-world PLIX, try having students brainstorm other applications of a particular concept, or even design their own PLIX to address a concept. All right, so as you've seen throughout these PLIX, there are a number of different ways to have students work with and use PLIX. In class, as a warm-up, exit pass, or to explore a concept. At home, as a homework assignment, or students can post answers to PLIX questions on the CK12 Cafe Corner to differentiate instruction using challenge questions, learn more, and explorations. To foster conversation, the last question of each PLIX is a discussion question, and some lead to the PLIX Corner. All right, so I've mentioned PLIX Corner a couple of times now, so let's talk about what it is and how to find it. The CK12 Cafe is a place where you can ask, help, and share with other users. Just click the link to Cafe at the top of the CK12 homepage to get there. We're going to enter PLIX Corner, where users answer intriguing PLIX discussion questions. All right, so here's a great example of a discussion in the PLIX Corner. The PLIX math question of the week recently was from the Sets and Symbols Size of Infinite Sets PLIX. You can assign the PLIX featured in a PLIX Corner post and have your students join this conversation and discuss their ideas with classmates and students around the world. One of the standards of mathematical practice is construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. The PLIX Corner is a great place for students to discuss their reasoning about a topic. As participants of this webinar, you get an exclusive sneak peek at a future version of the CK12 Geometry Concepts book. CK12 is enhancing the book by adding interactives for students to explore concepts by hand rather than just looking at a diagram. This section is on triangle sum theorem. In the first interactive, students can explore the dimensions and angles formed by the Bermuda Triangle. So we can move around the points. Okay, next we have a class activity here, which students tear off the angles of a triangle and align them to see they add to 180 degrees. This activity can be followed up with an interactive to summarize the experience. The last interactive introduces a 2-column proof of triangle sum theorem. If you're interested in exploring a preview of the new Interactive Filled Geometry Concepts book before it's published, contact interactives@ck12.org. All right, so have fun exploring our new interactives.
All right, Katie, let's stop there for a minute. And looks like we've had some questions come into the Q&A window, so please keep them coming throughout the presentation. But let me ask a couple of these to Katie. One of our users said, I think I heard you say that you could design your own Plix. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our interactives team is continuing to make Plix, and if you have an idea for a Plix that you'd like to use with your class, just email us at interactives@ck12.org with your ideas. It would be great if you can include a sketch of what you'd like it to look like, a description, maybe even a few questions, and we can email back and forth and make this work.
Okay, we have a user asking, I think when you were demonstrating the discussion questions on the Plix, it says, will they share verbally or with a post? I would prefer a post. How would we do that?
Yeah, so currently most of our discussion questions are designed just for verbal feedback in conversations, but every week we add a couple of discussion question posts into the Plix Corner, and we link to the Plix Corner in the actual discussion question. And so you're going to see more and more of these actually become posts where people can post their answers on the forum.
That leads us right into the next one, which users asking us to show how to access the Plix Corner. So if we give Katie a second, I think she can share her screen here, and we'll have her take you to how you can access that, probably from our home page.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Unmute, say that again.
All right, can you guys see my screen? Okay, awesome. So if you go to Cafe at the top of the page, it'll take you to the cafe with a bunch of different corners, including the Plix Corner over here at the top right. And you can see some of our posts where we feature a math Plix of the week, a science Plix of the week, and then some other people will ask questions periodically about Plix. So yeah, you can just answer some of these. Looks like we've got a few answers on this one about conditional probability. So you could scroll down and see what other people wrote. You could type in your answer here. And if you actually click through to the Plix, you'll see, once I open up these challenge questions, I'm just going to answer these just quickly to get through. It'll give you a little preview of some of the questions available. This is actually a pretty fun one related to an old game where you use probability to find the best, the prize. So this one here has a question and it links to the Plix Corner. Discuss your answer in Plix Corner. So you could click on it and it'll take you back to that post. So if you wanted to assign that Plix to your class and ask them to answer in the post, that's how you would do it.
So related to that, we have a user asking, can you assign discussion questions in the Plix Corner to your class, or do they have to discuss it with the whole world? What do you think about that one, Katie?
Ooh, good question. So I'm sure there's a way that you definitely can assign it to just your class. You could use our groups feature, and you could set up a group just for your class where they can answer the question. You could, yeah, using the Plix Corner, they would be discussing with the whole world, but you don't have to do it that way. There's those other options. You might be able to create a quiz or something where you could create a little field for them to write their answer in as well.
Yeah, so like we mentioned earlier, we do have a Groups and Practice 101 that's coming up on Wednesday that can answer a lot of questions that you guys might be having about how to start that process of assigning work to students. I can see that in the Q&A, our team's answering some questions relating to learning management systems. We'll touch on that maybe a little bit later in today's presentation, and then also know that we have a full session that's just on our integration with learning management systems like Edmodo and Canvas. So there is a session option if you're wanting to learn all about all of our resources, not just Plix and Sims, but how to assign them. So for now, keep all the questions coming in the Q&A, but I think, Katie, why don't you go ahead and maybe continue with your presentation, and we'll stop you again here in a bit and field some more questions.
Okay, so I've told you guys a lot about Plix, and now it's your turn to find a Plix that you could use in your classroom. So let's press escape to escape from the Zoom window and open up your internet browser and go to ck12.org. For those of you staying on the Zoom window, you can watch me find Plix on the CK12 site. So I'll give you guys just a sec here. All right, so here we are at the CK12 homepage. It's time for your first challenge. We are going to navigate from the CK12 homepage to the Plix Browse page. If it's your first time on the Plix Browse page, or if you've not signed into CK12, you will be prompted with a tutorial on how to use Plix. To get to the Plix Browse page, you just scroll down. Got this icon here to click on, and there we go. Here's our Plix Browse page. Okay, so now let's go back to the CK12 homepage. Excuse me, there we go. And try to find a Plix within a concept page. So as a geometry teacher, I would often start the school year off reviewing points in the coordinate plane. So our second challenge, we're going to find the Plix related to the concept of points in the coordinate plane. All right, after we've returned to the CK12 homepage, ck12.org, you go to the search bar up here and type in the page for points, excuse me, in the coordinate plane. There it is. Okay, so the biggest search result that appears at the top of the list says points in the coordinate plane and directs me to the concept page. So I'm going to click on this. At the top of the page in the featured content, I see a Plix with a title that begins with Map of the Town. This is a nice Plix that allows students to explore the fundamentals of plotting points on the coordinate plane by building out a map of locations in a small town. So here we are, here's our Plix. And with that, this might be a good time to stop and see what questions we have coming in about Plix before we move on to the second half of this webinar, where Sonia discusses simulations. So please join us back in your Zoom window to participate in the chat and Q&A.
A couple of questions about the content of our Plix. Somebody asked, what's the status of the chemistry Plix /interactives of maybe Katie, that one, and then I'm seeing a lot of concepts for 4th grade and up. What's available for younger scholars? So what's the sweet spot for our Plix?
Yeah, so we do have quite a few chemistry Plix. We can continue to make more. Again, if you have any thoughts on chemistry Plix that you would like to see made, you can always send us ideas at interactives@ck12.org. And then for the younger students, we do have a few definitely related to the value of numbers, relating to like algebra blocks, the unit blocks, that's what they're called. You have the hundreds, tens, ones, and everything, and you can manipulate those and see how the values change. We have others that teach you about measurement and estimating and distance. So we do have quite a few. You can find a lot of them in the arithmetic and measurement sections. That would be my best recommendation.
Okay, yeah, for most of our content, math and science, we are pretty comprehensive coverage for middle school and high school, with some new content being added all the time for elementary. But below fifth grade, we're a little more limited on what we offer in any of our content, much less with the Plix and the simulations. So I think we're going to switch gears here for a second, and we're going to transition over to the next part of our webinar. So I'm going to steal the screen back here. But again, any questions you have for Plix, keep them coming. But we're excited to show you our simulation. So I'm going to share the screen. And at this time, let me go ahead and introduce you to a member of our science content team, Sonia, who's going to take you on this tour through the simulations.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Hi, everyone out there. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon to discuss CK12's interactive simulations. And so very similar to Katie's presentation, I'm going to start by focusing on our collection of 120 simulations, which we lovingly refer to as SIMs, and show you how to navigate the SIMs browse page and search for a particular SIM. I'll then help to familiarize you with the general structure of the SIMs and highlight the many embedded features and resources that you can use when teaching. And I'll share some of my ideas that I have for using the SIMs as an instructional tool in class or at home to differentiate instruction and to dispel some of those common misconceptions. And throughout the presentation, just as we've been doing, we're posting these planning and teaching strategies in that chat window. So be sure to have that window open and maybe jot some notes down about those planning and teaching strategies that you can use. Again, very similar to Katie's, my main goal is that by the end of this webinar, you're excited and you feel equipped to use CK12 simulations in your class this upcoming school year. My advice is pick one sim and experiment with it, even in those first few weeks of school. Have fun with this. And now this actually is a picture of a whiteboard in my classroom 3 years ago. So I'm sharing this with you because sadly I spent my entire lunch period drawing this image for my students, just trying to relate the law of reflection with what they see in a mirror. And thankfully, advancements in computer programming have led to something that wasn't available to me at this time: the ability to overlay a realistic physical scene with their scientific and mathematical descriptions in a much more compelling way, so that we science teachers can eat our lunch now. All right, so let me show you. This is an example of the CK12 interactive simulation. This is the prom night sim, a result of the beautiful collaboration between science teachers, animators, and software developers at CK12. So the prom night sim begins with an intriguing question, and then if we press play, it advances through an introductory video explaining basic concepts and posing further questions to get students to think about the underlying physics in their real-world scenario. So really what it's trying to do is pull the kids in from their desk or at home and put them into a setting and make them think about science on a real-world setting. Much better than my whiteboard image. All right, the next scene that we'll go into, we refer to as the sandbox. And the reason we call it a sandbox, like Katie mentioned, it's meant for users to just jump in, play around, and discover new things, as we all did when we were kids. And in this interactive environment, you're going to consistently find sliders that allow you to manipulate physical variables, responsive animations that show these relationships. The next scene is 3 questions that can be answered by adjusting the sliders. And then the last scene is 4 more compelling real-world questions that kind of invite the student to think about applications of the underlying concepts in different physical situations to promote their continued learning and, most of all, their continued curiosity. So now that you've seen a simulation, let's talk about how you can access the Sims. So here we are on that CK12 homepage, which hopefully you're familiar with. And there is an icon on the homepage, and it has a little roller coaster there. It says physics, chemistry. And also I'm going to share with you a web address. It's www.ck12.org/sims. This is a really nice, simple shortcut that you can use on your class websites, or if you want to share with your colleagues. This provides you with a nice shortcut that allows you to navigate directly to our simulation browse page. All right, so like everything offered at CK12, the simulations are free to all users. You simply have to sign in, and you can see there on the top right-hand corner, you can join if you're new or sign in. And you need to do this to access the simulation beyond your first sample. So you and your students will need to be signed in. All right, so once we're signed in, we can navigate to the Sims browse page. This is what it looks like, our simulation browse page. And our collection of Sims are currently divided into two branches, physics and chemistry. Right now, we're looking at the physics tab with access to over 100 simulations that all animate real-world settings that are hard to replicate in the classroom. So just right here, this first row of Sims highlights three of my favorites. The first one is Journey to Mars. And it allows students to explore why trips to Mars happen only during certain launch windows. The violin sim poses the question, why does a violin sound different from a guitar? And the rose-colored glasses sim allows students to explore how we perceive color by changing the light and color in a luxury car showroom, which is really fun. Again, all real-world settings, really hard to replicate in the classroom and compelling to students. So hold tight. I know there's a lot of math teachers or earth science, physical science teachers out there. I saw you introducing yourselves in the chat. That was really cool. Although these Sims are formally labeled as physics, their topical coverage is broad. And we do have Sims that relate to concepts regarding physical science, earth science, astronomy, and math. So even though you might not be a physics teacher or a chemistry teacher, I encourage you to visit the Sims browse page at www.ck12.org/sims, and I'm confident you'll find something that you can use in your course and level. Another really exciting thing that I want to share with you today is that we offer a free CK12 Physics Simulations app for your iOS and Android tablet devices. So you can see those two icons there at the top. By clicking on either of those two icons, you and your students can easily download the app for free. Again, everything at CK12 is free and always will be, on the App Store or Google Play Store today, and I hope you do that. Okay, a few things about the app that I'd like to highlight. It's only for tablet devices. All of our Sims, whether accessed online or through the app, require that 7-inch screen or larger. So it's important to note that the Sims do not work on smartphones. However, a lot of our other CK12 resources do work on the smartphones. So just note that the simulations need a 7-inch screen or larger. Now, the exciting thing about the app is that it allows you and your students to download individual Sims to your devices for offline use. So say goodbye to wasting all that precious class time. I know I did. I loaded software, or I guided my students through multiple clicks, navigating them, taking like 20 minutes to navigate them to a simulation. All of our Sims are HTML5 based and can be launched on our website or via the app with just one click. Super awesome. So just imagine, maybe for me, I would think a simple homework for my class would involve asking students to download a Sim to their tablet device for homework the night before. So when prompted in class, they can all launch the Sim quickly and easily on their tablet devices without any threat of Wi-Fi or loading issues interrupting the lesson. The CK12 teams worked really hard to ensure that you never lose a learning moment in your class. So I hope you visit the app stores or Google Play stores after our webinar and download these apps and explore. I think you'll be really pleased. All right, so let's go back to that Sims browse page. And I clicked on that second tab that says chemistry simulations. Now by clicking on this tab, you're gonna get access to 13 recently released chemistry sims. Now these are still in the beta stage of development. So you'll see the beginning of the full structure that you see in the physics sims. These chemistry simulations still all take place in compelling real-world settings, and they work to provide the microscopic explanations for macroscopic observations of the world around us. So again, I hope you'll explore and experiment with using these newly released chemistry sims and provide us with your feedback on what you think and how it goes. There is a feedback tab in the sandbox of every sim. We do review it, and we will listen and try to take into account your feedback. So we look forward to hearing that. All right, so going now back to that physics simulations browse page, I've scrolled down to the next row of sims. So just to get you acquainted at what you're looking at and a few more sims, on the left we have the airplane sim, and this allows students to manipulate the forces of flight. In the middle we have the Cassegrain telescope sim that explores how a telescope collects and magnifies light. And then on the right there we have that prom night sim, which we previewed earlier, about the law of reflection. Okay, so let's talk about finding a sim. So there are many ways to explore our collection and find the sim for your particular class or lesson. So what I did here was I just simply scrolled down, and you can do that. It's very easy to scroll down through the 120 sims. Or you can type keywords into the search bar. So I'll highlight that there. And lastly, there's a way to filter the sim. So you'll see the filter tab there. Okay, so you can filter, if we click on filters, you can filter the sims by concept, and I'll highlight that there. And you can also filter the sims by next generation science standards. So filter by standards, and that will allow you to find a sim for your lesson where you're trying to meet those NGSS standards. And these concepts and standards are also listed under each simulation. So you'll see that highlighted there, concepts and standards. In addition, there is a worksheet link under each sim. So here we'll highlight where that worksheet link is. Now clicking on that arrow will bring up a pop-up window. And this is a worksheet that can be easily downloaded as a PDF. Now there are a variety of ways that these worksheets can be used, but I think it's really most important to note that all of the embedded features that I'm going to show you today about the sims, the big opening question, the text of the introductory video, the slider-based questions, challenge questions, they're all accessible in worksheet format here. So if internet is an issue at your school, or you would like a handout that will help guide students in using the sims, or even if your students just simply respond better to turning something in, these worksheet resources are currently available for all of the physics simulations, and the chemistry sim worksheets will be coming down the road. So be sure to check these out, download them, print them, and Star just posted that as a planning strategy as well. Okay, so now let's, now that we're familiar with how to navigate the Sims browse page and find a particular sim through the search bar or the filters, let's discuss the features embedded within each sim. So I'm going to start here with our hot oven sim, and this sim highlights the relationship between temperature and thermal energy. It begins with the opening question: why does the metal in the oven burn you, but the air does not? A really intriguing question for learners of all ages. So if this were me, I would probably project this simulation on the overhead projector in my classroom, and as students are walking in, their bell work or bell ringer would be, when the bell rings, pen to paper, 3 minutes, do a quick write, and write down anything that comes to mind in response to this question. Why does the metal burn you but the air does not? And this will help students develop that habit of reflection, and I'll be walking around, I could imagine, informally assessing their thinking. Then I would press play. I'll do that here. All right, and then I can change the font to make sure that all students can see the text from their seats on the overhead projector. And I could kind of pause the video, and you'll see, as you get more familiar with these introductory videos, the text and the animations kind of bring the student into the setting. So here you've just baked cookies, right? You touch the metal, you're more likely to be burned by the metal than the air. So the idea is this introductory video kind of brings the students from their desk in class or at home into this setting and poses scientific questions to kind of get them to think about the scientific principles behind this real world setting. All right, now just to note, for repeat users of this sim, the introductory video can also be skipped. So if we ever come back to this in my class, I'd probably just skip through this introductory video. So now that we've talked about some of these features, let's move into the next scene, which we call the sandbox. So this is the runaway balloon sim that relates to the gas laws and addresses the big question. What happens to your runaway balloon when it reaches high altitude? I know my 3-year-old probably wondered this last week when his balloon escaped too. So again, compelling to all ages. In every sandbox, you'll almost always see 1 or 2 graphs. So here we are in the sandbox. You'll see a few graphs and a few sliders that allow you to manipulate the basic parameters. Each slider in the graph, and you can see I press the play button, the animation changes. So one thing to note here is each slider has an info tag, and that information is also included in the worksheet. So that's something that students can click on if they want to know more about that variable or what that slider controls. And also, this is really important, the gear icon. It allows you to zoom into the graphs. It also allows you, and this is one of my favorite features, to hide the graphs. So if you're teaching even elementary or middle school and you just want to have them play around with the animations, you can. Now, there are about 3-minute YouTube tutorial videos that I access by clicking on tutorial. And this provides a screencast with a nice introduction to the simulation to get you and your students comfortable. For students who are kind of stuck, there is links to our CK12 concepts. So here, maybe your chemistry students are forgetting about the gas laws, they can click on those concepts. Now, for students who are ready for the challenge, there's a set of challenge questions that kind of pose some more deep thinking, higher level questions for students who are ready for it. So the main thing I want to, okay, so let me just give you one quick exercise that I think would be fun to do with this simulation sandbox. I could imagine, again, projecting it on an overhead projector in my class. I would have maybe groups of 4 on whiteboards, and I would set the sliders to certain parameters. So I would set the sliders. I would then hide the graphs, and I would prompt my students to sketch on the whiteboards their predictions of what the graphs might look like. Then I would, once everyone's ready, their graphs are sketched on their whiteboards, I would drop down the graphs and reveal the results. And then I think that would just ignite this really great class discussion on why the graphs looked the way they did, maybe ask the students reasoning for their predictions and have them kind of reflect on that. So that's one teaching strategy I'd like to share with you. But the main thing I really want to highlight in the sandbox is that there are many tools available to you to help you easily differentiate instruction for your students. So as you can see in this one interactive environment, students who are struggling are supported. There's tutorial videos and there's links to concept readings and concept videos. Students who are ready to move on are challenged with those challenge me questions. And the main thing is that all students are prompted to be curious and have fun. It's a really playful environment. Okay, so moving on, So first we have the introductory video, then the sandbox. Now this is our Phases of the Moon sim. And this, I'm gonna talk to you about the slider-based questions. So this Phases of the Moon sim connects the concept of circular motion with the big question. Can you tell time just by looking at the moon? So I'm gonna scroll through to the slider-based questions. Now, when you click on a slider-based question, you're taken back to the sandbox and asked to adjust the sliders a certain way to answer the question. So let's click on try it. Let's try it out. So here it posed a question. I'm gonna adjust the slider to answer it and press submit. Now I get immediate feedback because at CK12 we're all about establishing a place of practice. So students get feedback on their attempts. And my answer is recorded here, so I could learn from my mistakes or use the numbers. And also at CK12, you can customize everything. So if you want to, as instructors, want to type in your own questions to tailor this simulation to your specific course or level, you can. They will appear in that Community Contributed tab. So there you can see some user-generated questions. And you'll always be able to distinguish CK12 content from that user-generated content. So with these slider-based questions, I could envision prompting students to answer them in pairs during class. I could also see the completion of the slider-based questions as a homework assignment because they provide specific prompts for students regarding how to interact with the sliders, which I think is really useful for independent learning, kind of guide students with how to interact in that sandbox. All right, so let's move on and let's look at this is a newly created chemistry sim. The title of this sim is the What's the Matter sim. And it opens with a great big question, again, intriguing to students of all ages, one of my favorites. If ice, water, and steam are all made of H2O molecules, then what makes them so different from each other? So after reading this question, you press play, you'll see that in this chemistry sim, we skip the introductory video and we're placed right into that sandbox environment. And you can see here the chem sims vary a little bit. We don't have sliders, we just have a play button. And we have just these beautiful animations that place a molecular overlay onto a simple everyday scenario. So here we have, let's say, ice, liquid, here we have steam, all in a glass cup. And really, and I know all you chemistry teachers out there have huge smiles on your face because this is what we as science teachers want. The students to see the world, right, in that molecular view, really cool. Now, what I wanted to talk about in this simulation is all simulations end with 4 more real-world questions that kind of lead and guide students into different paths to continue their learning. So if we click on it here, what is fire? You can see these beautiful animations, a really compelling question, and then a little blurb that answers the question. Again, you can customize the sim and you can add your own real-world examples, or even your students could add theirs. So you can upload an image, pose a question, and then write a simple answer. So here's how I would use these real-world examples. I think it would be fun to prompt students to do further research on one of these for homework. So my homework assignment, let's say we use this simulation in class. Okay, for homework, go home, pick one of these 4 questions that interests you, do some research, and come back tomorrow with something to share with your classmates. Then the following day, I would probably start class with saying, okay, get your homework out, turn to the person next to you or your table group, and share what you found and share some of your research with regards to the question you picked. Another idea could even be to prompt students, like I said, to create their own examples. So they could upload their own real-world example and contribute to our bank of user-generated content. I think students really think it's cool to kind of leave that digital footprint, to see their stuff on our site, and it would be a really fun and kind of creative assignment for them. Okay, so one of the main goals of these interactive simulations is to challenge common student misconceptions regarding science. So here's a chart that I just wanted to share with you, because I know this is one of the biggest challenges as a science teacher, is how do we dispel those misconceptions? So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through the first few. One of the most common science misconceptions is that particles of solid have no motion. So that simulation I just showed you, what's the matter? In the solid ice cube, those molecules are still jiggling. So you could have a conversation to dispel that misconception with the sim we just saw. There's also a simulation, you could see the title on the right there, Expand and Contract. That simulation, it has this beautiful animation of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it shows the molecules of this solid, enormous object, the Golden Gate Bridge, just jiggling, right? And then you can actually increase the temperature and see how that affects the motion of those solid molecules. The next misconception I like to highlight that we have a sim for is that mass and weight are the same thing. I know this is one that I always kind of started my physics class with each year and tried to dispel early on. We have a sim, and I'll show you this later if we have time in my demo, the Astronaut Training Chamber sim. And that sim allows you to change the mass and change your location on our solar system, from Earth to Mars, to our moon, to even Saturn's moon Dione. And it helps students see that the mass stays the same on those locations, but the weight changes, or the force due to gravity. So it's a really cool sim. So take a screenshot of this, and like I said, if there's one of your favorite misconceptions on here, jot down the name of that sim and be sure to check it out. A lot of our sims, the goal is to dispel these misconceptions. All right. Okay, thank you to all of those math teachers out there for being so patient. I want to highlight just a few sims that could be used to teach some important math concepts. So the first one on the top left is the water fountain sim. It has to do with projectile motion. So I could imagine it could be used in a pre-calculus class to teach parametric equations where the x and y variables are dependent on a third variable. In this simulation, that third variable would be time. So be sure to check that out if you teach those subjects. The driverless car sim. This has to do with vector addition. It's a really fun way for students to learn about that concept. The stadium wave sim, and this can be used for more complicated sinusoid problems and a combination of functions after students learn sinusoids. And lastly, at the bottom right corner, we have the At the Crossroads sim. And this sim can be used to teach conversions of systems of measurement and provide students with an opportunity to practice unit conversions across systems. So like I said earlier, although these sims are just labeled physics or chemistry, there are many that can be used to highlight the real-world applications connected to a variety of STEM concepts. Okay, so that's going to conclude my formal sim part of the webinar. Here's just a review of everything we covered. So again, our sims are not lab models. They're built upon those everyday examples. And every sim sandbox has those interactive sliders and graphs. So my advice to you is, if you teach the younger students, hide the graphs and just allow them to make observations of those fun animations and see how the animations change. If you do teach high school or even those advanced placement or honors classes, all of our simulations, the graphs and the numbers are mathematically accurate. Students can derive equations from the graphs. They can use numbers to plug into equations. So know that you can use them for your advanced classes as well. Be sure to check out how to filter the sims by the NGSS standards using that filter. And download that app and experiment with downloading a sim to your device so that you can play with it offline. There are the worksheets, tutorial videos, links to concepts and challenge questions. One thing I'd like to share with you is, like, our stuff is ready for you to customize, but it's also good for grab and go, right? So let's say I have a conference, I'm going to be absent. I personally could imagine printing out the worksheet, telling students to watch the 3-minute tutorial video to get acquainted with the sim, and then their class kind of task would be watch the tutorial video, complete the worksheet and turn it in. And right there, without having much prep, I have a whole class lesson ready for my students. So I think at this time I'm ready for your questions, and thank you so much for listening.
Sonia, you got everybody really excited about that misconception. Well, about everything, I'm sure, but about the misconceptions page, we had a flood of questions coming in saying, is that a real page on CK12, or how can we get those misconceptions in the hands of everybody?
Cool. Okay. Well, I think what we could do is, let's think on this, but we will try, I don't know what you think, Lindsay, the best way. We can go back to it. I can talk through it a little bit more, and then we can see about maybe I'll talk to some people about posting it on the site or emailing it to you guys as well.
Okay, well, I think we always do send out an email 24 hours later. So I think we'll get that sent out in that email. And then here in a second, somebody asked if I can go back to that slide and you can screenshot it. And yes, we will do that here in just a minute. But just being conscious of time here, one more question that I wanted to hit on before I start some of my wrap-up information. And then, of course, we will stay on. We will answer all questions. But Sonia, can you clarify the difference between a sim and a Plix? We just showed both. What are the main differences between the two of them?
Okay, so big thing, Plix is for really all branches, math or science. So we have specific Plix for math, right? Algebra or geometry, or and the same. We have specific Plix made for earth science. So you're gonna have more concepts, Plix available for more concepts. Sims, we have only 120. So really the number, I think she said 1,130 Plix versus 120 Sims. So that's a big difference. Now, as far as just general like structure, my best answer to that question is this. Plix is a very simple way to interact. You're usually dragging a red dot or pulling drag and drop. It's a very simple interaction that allows you to learn one concept very directly. And it has about 5 questions that kind of guide the students through that interaction and learning that concept. Simulation there's many ways to adjust the sliders, and that will elicit many different, graphs or animation responses. So many of the Sims have like up to 4 sliders. So, and 2 graphs and different animations. So I would say the Sims are a little, have a little bit more variety of way of interacting. And like I said, they're focused more on kind of the physics and chemistry overlay, those scientific mathematical explanations on the real world setting.
Okay, great. You just answered one of the questions that's going to be on the assignment. For those of you guys who are kind of newer to our program, if you are looking to get CK12 certified, we do require that you attend 7 sessions and that you complete the matching assignments. So here is the assignment for this session. It is a tinyurl.com. We're going to put it in the chat window right now. But the tiny URL is CEP17 Sims Plix. So that's quite the mouthful here, but CEP17 Sims Plix. It's being put in the chat window. You can always find this. I'll leave it up here for just another second in case you're writing it down or anything. But you can find links to any assignments on our Certified 2017 page. So when you go to ck12.org/certified2017, you can find all of the session information, some information about our program, a link to office hours, a link to all the archived videos. It does take us about 24 hours to download the video, get it up on YouTube, get it linked on our webpage. So give us a day to turn this stuff around, but you can always find the links to assignments and session information on Certified 2017. So not a requirement, but something that we love to receive from you is feedback. This is a tiny URL, another one, that is CEP 2017 feedback. We'll also put that in the chat window. This is the same link for every session this summer. If you're ever compelled to tell us something that went well, things that we could be doing better, We love to hear your general feedback on our sessions. We look at those and we take your feedback to heart. So thank you for helping us to continue to improve our programming. So if you have continued questions or need for support, we love to give you the help that you need. You can email support@ck12.org. Also, social media is pretty active these days with all of our, 1,300 plus participants in this program. So feel free to use @CK12 Foundation or #CK12 Foundation to talk about your participation in this program. So like all of our sessions, we try to end, I think we're right at the hour mark, but we do stay on and we answer all the questions that we haven't been able to get to yet in our session. So for those of you who need to head out, goodbye. We'll see you in a future session, hopefully. The rest of you stay on, and we have both Katie and Sonia here to talk about Sims and Plix. So first of all, what was this question on the more button? Did that get resolved? There were a lot of people asking about the more button. Okay. I guess people were looking to save the chat. And I think we're still limited. We keep records of the chat and we keep records of the Q&A, and we're kind of making this master Q&A list for everything we've been asked throughout the summer. We don't have that posted anywhere yet, so it will be posted. But as far as I know, there's not really a way for you guys as the viewers to save that information unless you're doing some copy pasting or some screen chats. So I'm going to go back to that misconceptions page. Katie's going to tackle a question here, but let me go back to that slide that somebody wanted to screenshot. Right there, I think, was this misconceptions page. So, and then Katie, go ahead.
So just to continue the discussion about the difference between Plix and Sims, you could also think about it in terms of how you're using the interactives in your classroom, because as Sonia said, the Plix, really you manipulate one or two variables to focus on a specific part of a concept. It's often part of a puzzle or like a visual exploration. It's something that you can use if you just have a short window of time and you want to get the students working on some activity, transitioning between other things, or just to kick off the class period, or to fill in a little time at the end. Whereas the Sims might be something that you would spend more time on, almost like a lab, if you have a larger chunk of time.
Katie, we have a question here asking about how our topics work in CK12. It says, are your topics listed as grade bands or levels? Maybe do you want to talk about when they're browsing CK12, how do they hit at a grade level?
So we level all of our Plix as at grade. So it's all, none of them are listed as basic or advanced. In terms of grade level, or we at CK12 tend to group things by branch and concept rather than 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. And so you can find Plix by looking up a specific concept and say algebra if you know you're going to be teaching that concept, rather than by looking up 9th grade math.
Okay, Sonia, question for you I think you mentioned earlier that people could suggest ideas for Sims. So can you explain again how they might be able to do that? And then will there ever be Sims for other sciences?
Okay, great question. So why don't I actually share my screen? And then I can just show, because I know it's kind of abstract to show. So from the browse page, I click on this simulations icon, and I'm going to just get into a simulation to show you where you can give some feedback. So let's say I'll pick this Journey to Mars sim. It's just kind of fun. Okay, so in every simulation, on kind of the toolbar up here, you'll see this thing for feedback. If you click on it, you can type your feedback. So for instance, if there's a sim that you think could teach, let's say here, Kepler's laws, or whatever, orbital motion better, or you have a way you teach it in your class that you think would benefit from a simulation, you can always type your feedback here, load an image, and send to us. Or if you use this sim and you find that you have a suggestion for improvement, the feedback I like to get very much is, this was awesome, here's how I used it, and it worked well for me, so send us the positive feedback too. But in essence, in every simulation, there's a feedback icon that allows you to send feedback directly to us, and I do read it. I go through it every week, and I'll email you back like thank you to confirm that we got it, and we are out here and we are listening, so please send us that feedback.
Okay, we have another one for you, Sonia, asking about PhET sims, that they have a huge bank as well. Do you want to speak for a second of maybe how we differ from those PhET sims and what some advantages are to CK12?
Totally. I think it's a great question. You know, in the classroom, I use PhET simulations a lot, and I'm very comfortable with them. So let me just show the browse page. So here's really where I think we differ. The PhET simulations, I believe they're more abstract, virtual lab-based. You know, their settings oftentimes are like kind of just like a box, and you know, molecules colliding, or you know, many variables. What I like about our collection of simulations is it's just that. It's a collection all based in the real world with an overlay of, you know, the scientific and mathematical principles guiding the real world setting. So just like a fun one, I'm going to do bowling alley, right? So here's a sim, the bowling alley sim. It is all on this real world setting. This has to do with rotational motion and, right, the kinematics of rotation. And the idea too, another distinguishing factor aside from just the beautiful real world settings, is that all of our collection, you can interact with it in the same way. I often found with the PhET simulations and other simulations out there that every sim has a different way of interacting with it. Ours, as you can see here, you have that introductory video that kind of puts you into the setting, pulls you in, gets you curious. Then you have that interactive environment, and here, simple sliders, change the animations, and graphs. So I really feel like you'll see, once you start using these the first few weeks of school, by the second and third week, you won't even have to you know, instruct your students on how to interact. They will know sliders, graphs. It's all this beautiful framework of which they could learn a new concept. So they're not worried about learning the simulation. They're worried about learning the concept. And I think that's a big distinguishing factor of our collection.
Okay. Keep the questions coming if you guys have them. The question currently in the queue is, are you going to offer the certification classes after the summer? And that's a great question. Last summer, we started with what we called the Jumpstart program. And then, you know, in the fall, we thought, hey, we need to make this bigger, better, more exciting than ever, and offered the CK12 certification this summer. And I think come August, we're going to regroup a little bit and see how the summer went and talk about maybe how we could continue this throughout the school year. So we always do offer webinars. This past school year, we did about 2 a month, I think, on different topics with CK12. So we'll for sure be doing some webinars, but we're in talks after the dust settles on this summer to figure out what we want to do moving forward with our certification classes. But if you've enjoyed this, you think this is valuable, that's all great feedback for us to push to keep going with this. So still, I think Sonia kind of mentioned earlier, simulations, right now, chemistry and physics are the main focus. Like she said, they're pretty labor intensive with the domain experts working on the academic piece, and then our animators making them the beautiful polished simulations that you see. So biology and any other subject is not going to be developed right away. Am I right on that, Sonia?
Yeah, I think the way, just kind of to share with you our like rationalization on this, is we started with physics because our goal was kind of to overlay science onto a real world setting. And physics is just kind of the natural discipline that does that, right? The goal of physics is to explain how the world works around us. And it's, in essence, most physical explanations can be, you know, explained through a graph, right? A a linear line or the area under a graph. So it was a good place for us to start kind of putting the math and the science over the real world setting. It was the perfect discipline to start. From there, then we moved to chemistry, which the whole goal of chemistry is to describe what we see in our, macroscopic world at the microscopic level, right? With the jiggling atoms and molecules, compounds. So that's where we took up next. Now we're working really hard. We have a whole team, like Lindsay said, domain experts and animators, and we kind of test them out and revise them. So it's a really intensive process that takes years, frankly. And we've rolled out 13. We're hoping to roll out more chemistry sims. And then from there, we'll kind of see where we're going to go. But that's where we are now. And that's kind of our reasoning of why we chose to start with physics and then pick up chemistry.
So I think this question was kind of related about biology. Would that be perhaps online labs in the future? Do you know anything about that, Sonia?
No, I think in all honesty, where we're all now is kind of further expanding our chemistry simulations, and then we'll kind of we'll pick on that. But I do have to say, put your suggestions out there, because the team at CK12, we're all about the users. So if we feel like we're getting a big push for where's bio, or math or whatever, we do take that into account when we're making decisions on our projects. So, we take your suggestions into account, definitely.
Okay, so we're helping a user troubleshoot an issue with getting a Plix page to load. We have some program questions about homework. Let's see, I had problems send my homework to get certified. Can I complete this? Yes, again, we are suggesting kind of a week time limit to watch a session and complete the assignment, just to keep it relevant and fresh in your mind. Also, we're in the last 2 weeks of the summer program, so we're going to be issuing certification to everybody the first week of August. So that's kind of the natural end to our summer programming. So we're for sure going to want all the assignments by the beginning of August. So that's, the question is how much time does one have to finish certification? Yeah, you're looking at a couple more weeks to wrap it up for the summer. So we're going to wait just another minute and see if any other questions come in. Can the assignments be redone? That's an interesting question. I'm going to see if one of my colleagues can type you an answer to that. I assume you can access it again and submit it again. We'll see. I'm going to phone my friend Katie H. She's going to type you an answer to that. And yeah, she said the answer was yes to that. Okay, in the absence of any other questions here, can students draw on any of your sections? I'll have KDS talk about that.
So draw as an animate on top of? No, we don't have that functionality right now. If that's what your intention was behind the question, one suggestion I have is to project it on a whiteboard and allow students to use their whiteboard markers and draw on top of it there.
We do have a highlight feature in our Flexbooks that you can use to highlight, students can use to highlight and take notes. And then we also have a scratch pad that appears when you're doing practice, so kids can write on that. I think that's different, probably from what you're asking as far as an overlay that allows you to draw. I think again about the drawing, we're just limited to our highlighting, our scratch pad, and our basic functionality with our the way we interact with the sandbox and the simulations and our red dot sliders with the Plix.
I'm seeing a question. This is KDS. Have you incorporated GeoGebra into your curriculum? So that's an interesting question because I advertised earlier that we're coming out with an interactive geometry book, and you can get the preview to that by emailing interactives@ck12.org. In addition to the geometry book, we're actually currently working on an interactive algebra book, and we're even beginning a probability and statistics book as well as a calculus book, all filled with interactives. And in the algebra, probability and stats, and calculus books, we are going to incorporate GeoGebra interactives. So those are pre-made interactives created by the interactives team at CK12 that relate directly to the content in the book. Their interactives are actually going to be embedded in the book, so your students can play around with the graphs and the variables and the ideas and manipulate the equations as they go, as they read.
Okay, with that, we are going to sign off for the session. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you guys as soon as tomorrow in our future sessions. Thank you.